Hello, so I wanted to do a little video on the Akashic records, and this is actually one of the first videos I wanted to do. Trying to think how long it's been since I properly started my YouTube channel. Maybe I don't know if it's been 6 months, I don't know, but maybe something like that. But I really have wanted to talk about this, and I do want to do a longer form video on this as well, but this is kind of just a little insight into the Akash and how it works, and some things that I have kind of noticed that happen with the Akashic records as well. So anyone that's had sessions with me, you'll know that or just anyone that's spent time with me, you'll know that I read the Akashic records, and that's something that every single human being on this planet has the capability to do. We can all read the Akash, we can all attune ourselves to its frequency and to its vibration, and we are all affected by it and almost live within it, whether we are reading it consciously or not. And it's one of those things where I find so many people want to read the Akash, but you kind of have to let go of the desire to read it in order to be able to access it. So the more you just let go and let your highest alignment just naturally come through and evolve through your dedication to your inner work and to your healing journey, the more you just naturally open up and start reading the Akash anyway. It's kind of one of those things. It's like if you are kind of holding it as this external thing to attain, it's really hard to read it. Whereas if you just open yourself up just through the natural process that occurs when we step back our negative ego and we just allow for the natural intelligence of our healing just to take be its own guide, then we notice that we are how easy it is to be within that Akash field and be able to read its energies. So if you are doing psychic readings, you will be tapping into the Akash. If you are looking into historical events and reading them psychically, you're reading the Akash. If you are reading future events, you are also reading the Akash. And so often in a session, for example, someone will come to me and there are certain records which need to be examined or looked at or delved into or possibly collapsed. It really depends on what's going on with that individual person. Sometimes I might not collapse a whole Akashic record within a session. That might not be necessary. Sometimes people are just ready to let go and step into something new, or ready just to let go of a pattern that they've been repeating. So all of our past lives, all of our thoughts that we think are stored in the Akash. So we might be clearing and collapsing Akashic records, but we're also continually creating them as well through the thoughts that we think and the experiences that we have. So we will have groups of records, and everyone's is going to look kind of similar but kind of different at the same time. So within these particular records, we're going to have our karmic stories, and we're going to have our ancestral kind of side of things, but then we're also going to have our own soul's lineage story within there as well. So we may have had X amount of past lives where we've been persecuted for being a mystic or a witch, or having some kind of being open about our magical capabilities, right? So that would all be stored under a record which says something along the lines of spiritual gifts, right? But within that record, there will be persecution for spiritual gifts. There will be all of these memories of when you used your gifts and it was this really beautiful experience. So our records are all kind of broken down into things that have been important to us. Some people will say that the records contain everything that's ever happened and ever been thought. But more accurately, I would say that it's actually things which are important that you will find in the records, and it's its own database. It is almost like an interactive guide, you know, and some people will read it. It depends on how your gifts work, depending on how you read the Akash. So I'm very clairvoyant. I receive a lot of images. So I will see an image, and then I'm also very claircognizant. I get just huge downloads of information. So I'll see an image, I'll connect with that image, and then I'll get the information drop coming through about that particular lifetime, perhaps what we need to clear and release from that lifetime, the pattern from that lifetime which is playing out today. And it's so interesting. Like, this is why I love my work. Like, listen, if there's something I could talk about that lights me up, it is my work. I think I have the best job in the entire world. It's like being a spiritual investigator who gets to like hold space with so much love. That is what I feel my role is, you know. It's like getting to the bottom of things with the intent to heal and with the intent to transmute and alchemize. And so often what will happen with clients is they'll have, say they've booked a session with me a week before, or say they're one of my mentorship clients, in which case I might see them weekly or whatever. During that week leading up to the session, there will be foreshadowings of what we are going to work on in that session. So they might have had 2 or 3 experiences where somebody was really rude to them, and it was kind of out of nowhere, and it was sort of unpredictable, and it was like, oh my God, that person was so rude to me. And so we get into the session, and they'll say, what's been coming up for you? And they're like, well, actually, I had a couple of experiences this week. It's kind of out of the blue where people were really abrupt with me. And that might be related to a particular Akashic record. It will be related to a particular Akashic record where they have been, it could be around sort of, maybe the record is sort of around persecution, but maybe it's around unpredictable persecution. And so what we might find is that where they are in their healing journey is they've got a timeline that's overlapping, which is all about being persecuted and all about this sort of trauma around people just, sort of starting on them, as we'd say in Scotland, out of nowhere. And so there might be a couple of lifetimes where that's happened, but something is coming up to be shifted. Something is coming up to be alchemized and transmuted. So what I will see when I go into the records is, okay, yeah, so I'm seeing there's this lifetime, and then we read into that, we get this sort of download of what happened there. And then we'll also then, what usually happens is, okay, yeah, so there's actually another lifetime where the same things happened. And what we'll try and do is find what's called the point of origin. So the first time that this ever happened in their records. So we could be going really, really far back with this. We might be going, thousands of years back. It really depends. Or maybe it's only in 2 other lifetimes that this has happened. So we might not be going that far back. But generally, we're trying to find the point of origin, because if we don't find that point, it's hard to collapse the record. So the record will still keep running. And often what happens as healers is maybe we're not meant to find the original point. Maybe there's too many other things that need addressed in that session. Maybe that person isn't ready to let go of that whole record, in which case we might just pull a little thread of that record, and maybe they'll go to another healer, or maybe it'll collapse on its own. Sometimes that happens. But there'll be some kind of reason why we have to look at that particular thing or that particular thing in the records that day. And I cannot tell you the amount of times, right, where I have said, yeah, this, and this happened, right? And the person has started crying, like sometimes uncontrollably crying, releasing, because maybe they haven't read that in the records themselves, right? But they know it is true. They know because they can feel it, the resonance. They know my soul experienced that, you know, and so it can be really validating for people. Maybe I've seen this quite a lot. Sometimes people haven't experienced a certain trauma in this lifetime, but we read the records, and maybe that particular trauma happened in a past life or happened in multiple past lives, and people will be like, oh my God, the clarity, thank you. I always wondered why I was so passionate about this particular issue, or why I always felt so strongly about this thing. And it's like, yeah, because, you know, you're still holding that in your records in some way. And so a really good tip is and I do this regularly when I go to sleep, I set an intention and I just say, whatever records I'm ready to clear out, to collapse tonight, let me work through it in my dream space. And sometimes the dreams, quite often they're dreams that you won't remember because your body's just going, let's shift this, let's get it out, let's get rid of it, right? But that's a really good way to work through your Akash, because ideally we want our records to be light, you know, and often, you know, if you're quite a sort of clairsentient person, if you really feel people when you talk with them, you can be talking with someone and you're like, their energy feels heavy. That can be because their records are so heavy, they're not clearing out their stuff, you know. And as a healer, whatever, you know, facilitator, space holder, you can feel that, you know, when you're working with somebody who does their inner work, because it's like, okay, this needs to go and it's gone. We need to clear this and it's gone, because your body, you know, some people I work with who are like really on top of their healing work, you just have to say to them, okay, I'm seeing this in your records, and their body's already, all it needed was that little bit of awareness, and their body's already running through it, going, okay, let's shift this, release that emotion, clear that out, you know? And so that's why it's so important, like meditation and emotional release, because that is the body of what makes up records, is the thoughts that you think, is the emotions that you store in your body. So sometimes to collapse a record, we have to clear out a load of beliefs. We have to shift a load of emotions that are in the field in order to be able to work out, okay, where is this record? How is it being held together in the etheric? And there might be cords, there might be contracts related to different experiences that somebody has had, and that's what is sort of binding this record together in that way. And so when I say it's like spiritual detective work, it really is, you know, you're piecing things, you're following the trail of energy in order to find out where where you're being led to. And that is the beautiful thing about healing sessions, is if you're working with somebody who really knows what they're doing, then it will feel like you're just weaving. You're just going, okay, this is ready, let's shift this, let's look at this, let's look into that. And it will have this, I find with sessions, it's almost like it has this like, it's like sacred geometries. It's like these perfect patterns that weave together, and you're, you know, as a healer, you're always learning from the people that you are working with, and they're always learning from you as well. It's this beautiful exchange of codes and frequencies and growth, you know. And that's the thing as well, is that, you know, there should never be competition amongst healers, because we are already corded and contracted to the people that we are meant to be supporting and helping in this life, in this plane. It's already written in so many ways that, okay, I'm going to meet you at this time and we're going to exchange these codes. So we need these codes for each other, you know. So it's always this beautiful kind of connection that you create with people through this kind of work. And so when we are clearing out our Akash, when we're really working on our Akash, it should feel light. Our field should feel light, because we're not carrying all of this density and all of this weight. And so the more that we work through our records, the more we do our healing work. And that's the thing, if you are doing your healing work, you're going to be working through your records, whether you're fully cognizant of the process or not. But if you're really going deep, that's kind of what's going to be happening naturally anyway. And so when people have repeated cycles, right? Things that is like, I always meet a guy and he's always got a partner and I'm the woman on the side, for example, right? That could be this pattern. That's in your records. That's a record that you are playing out and you're playing out and you're playing out, right? And maybe that comes from the trauma of when your dad left your mum when you were young, or maybe, and likely, there's past life incidences where that same thing has happened, or a situation which mirrors that or reflects that. And so your soul is continually trying to relive that in order to clear it out of the records. But what so often happens is we don't recognize when that pattern is occurring. We feel victimized. We feel like, why me? Why is it always me? And so we just live out the record again, rather than going, okay, either I need some assistance to understand this, you know, and there's also like no shame in going to somebody else around this kind of stuff. Like, I am a professional, whatever, mystic, intuitive practitioner, whatever. I have friends who are healers that I speak to so often, you know, when I go, okay, this is coming up for me. This is what I'm reading. Can you tell me what you're reading off this? Because it's so important. We all have blind spots. That's just part of being human, is, you know, you're so close to your own stuff that you can't see it. And that's why it can be so helpful to sit with a space holder and be able to unravel and unpack things so that you're not on your own with this kind of stuff. But equally, you know, there's a benefit sometimes to, you know, holding space for ourselves. There's things we work through on our own as well. And so, you know, there's no shame in sort of reaching out and asking for help if that's what you feel you require. And so when we're experiencing these certain patterns, it's always about being able to reflect and look at, okay, well, why? Where is this coming from? You know, is this something that is past life? Is it something that is ancestral? Is it an ancestral contract? I've given this has actually come up before with clients whose ancestors have made some kind of a contract with themselves where they've said, I'm not going to be with anyone again. I'm not going to be with a romantic partner again. And clients have come to me and said, you know, I just always seem to, like, you know, whenever I meet someone, they're not available, or there's something, you know, awry and prevents us from getting together. And I'm like looking in the records and I'm like, yeah, there's this ancestral contract that's running around that, you know. So it can be things that feel kind of quite far removed from us in that sense as well. It isn't necessarily everything that we've been through in this life, or even like our close ancestors. It can be super distant ancestors or past lives where something like that has happened too. So there's so many different things that can be being mirrored back to us and being reflected back to us in the records. And always we're intending to clear them out in some way. And we can do this through Akashic Records meditations. We can do this through simply asking, like, you know how often I just ask, if I don't understand something, I just ask the universe, I'm like, can you just let me know? What is this thing? What I'm trying to understand here? Can you just like let me know? A day, 2 days, either I'll have a dream about it, or I'll have a download, or I'll read something, or it will just come, you know. It's just trusting that information is available to you. It already exists within you. You're already the Akashic Records, you know. You're already reading them. You just don't know that you are. And so it's always just about cultivating that sense of trust with ourselves, with our intuitive capabilities. And I'm gonna do a video on like spiritual gifts and soul gifts, and how is it that we're actually meant to activate these things and tune into them and that kind of thing, because it's something that comes up with clients a lot. And one thing that I can't remember which mystic it was that said this, but all the kind of old school mystics like Gurdjieff and these sort of old school people that were kind of in Western esoterica, whenever they used to get asked like, oh, you know, how do I activate my clairvoyance? How do I activate my spiritual gifts? They'd say things like, they'd be like, find an old lady and walk her along the beach at sunset for 3 hours. And, you know, they would say things like that almost are, you're just like, what? Like, how does that activate my spiritual gifts? But the point that they're articulating is that when you focus too much on your spiritual gifts, you actually lose sight of your heart, because we view our gifts as these things which are like up here, when actually true spiritual gifts are unlocked through the heart space. Always, okay? Your gifts will only take you so far if you are not within the heart. And so, you know, Rudolf Steiner's got this quote where he said, for every step that you take in your spiritual advancement, take 3 steps in the direction of development of your character, you know. And it's sometimes things like that really go amiss in the sort of new age and that kind of world of trying to understand psychic development, because we overlook it. We see it as this thing which is out here rather than something that exists within us already. We are all already psychic. We just have forgotten. And so it's always going to come back to the heart. It's always going to come back to little things like that, you know, where you're maybe there's something that you're ignoring. Maybe there's a pattern that you keep playing out, and it's something you're just not even fully cognizant or aware of, and you just keep playing out this same pattern, and that's actually what's blocking you from being able to hear your claircognizant messages or your clairaudient messages. You know, it's little things like that that can be such a, you know, a little switch that you flick, and all of a sudden you are more in tune with this particular part of yourself. And sometimes we think it's all the big downloads and the big activations, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it is the spiritual tech that we're carrying, the implants that we're carrying, and entities and things like that. Sometimes it is that, but most often it's little things around compassion. It's little things around our hearts. And sometimes as well, what is important to note is like, but why do I want to develop that? Because, you know, always our moral and like ethical pursuit should come first. You know, it's like, okay, but why do you want to read the Akash? What is it that what is your intention around it? What are you hoping to gain from it? What are you hoping to attain from this, you know? And really question those deeper motivations around things, and question if they're truly coming from your heart space. So I am going to do, I want to do a longer video on the Akashics. I'm going to do a video on spiritual gifts as well, but this is just like a little mishmash of those things. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions or anything at all, just leave me a comment or send me something flying in front of my face, or send me a message or get in contact with me in some way. So thank you so much for watching, and take care, blessings, and enjoy the rest of your day.